Welcome to this special segment where we talk about all things related to wildlife and climate. And today we're going to be focusing on the crisis that is being seen in Maharashtra where it comes to leopards. Man animal conflict has increased. In fact, 29 districts of Maharashtra are seeing an increase in leopard numbers, and many of those districts are also seeing cases of leopard attacks, leopard attacking children, women in the fields, men as well. There's been a lot of anger and anguish, as well as protests have also been held in some parts of the state. So now Maharashtra has decided to deal with this crisis head on and to talk more about the kind of measures they're taking, because a lot is being talked about creating all these rescue centers. There's also talk of possibly putting some of those leopards, some bizarre ideas like sending them to Africa. So all these sort of ideas are being discussed right now in Maharashtra. The chief minister held an emergency meeting as well. And to talk more about this, I'm joined now by Anish Andheria, conservationist and president of Wildlife Conservation Trust. Thank you so much, Anish, for joining us on this very, very important issue. It's not just an issue related to Maharashtra, because we're also seeing similar problems in different parts of the country as well. So first and foremost, I'd like to take you through some of the suggestions that have been made. While a 560 crore has been granted to the Forest Department to deal with man-animal conflict, there's also talk of creating some 1,800 rescue centers in the worst affected districts of Pune, Nagar, and Nashik. So many rescue centers. What is your opinion on that?
So, first of all, thank you for having me. And I would have been happier if we were talking about happy things. But unfortunately, India is one of the better managed uh, countries when it comes to large carnivores. We have done exceedingly well in getting our tiger numbers back from the brink, also protected large tracts of land, and leopard population is also a good measure of that. However, as you have already mentioned, there is some crisis that's happening not only in Maharashtra but all across the country. First of all, I mean, I will first answer what you're asking me, but we'll get into
Yes.
greater detail as to why these things are happening. So, first of all, I don't see. First of all, I think there is a some mistake in the word rescue center, because if they have to construct 1,800 rescue centers, then the money allocated is not enough. So what they are saying is probably a shed where they'll be able to house a few animals. I mean, especially leopards in small cages. Now that is all that is possible with this kind of money, and I don't see the reason why 1,800 rescue centers have to be constructed, because once you trap animals and once you get the last animal out of some of these areas, see, conflict again is directly related to degradation of forests. Okay, so wherever you see this kind of conflict, these are non-traditional leopard areas. Leopards were not found there. They have somehow proliferated after the water regime has changed and the agricultural practices have changed. And so there is no forest in many of these areas. And so
Yes.
when you capture leopards, after a point there'll be nothing left to capture, and then you will have all these large constructions just decaying. So we have to rethink. They may have said this in reports, but I think what is needed is some transit centers, large ones in a few areas. You can always transport animals. Leopards are 35 to 60 kgs only. They are not tigers. They are less than 4 times the size of a tiger. And so transporting them is not a problem. And so I think that particular para, I absolutely think is
Okay.
misplaced.
And why are we seeing this huge increase in the conflict? Though I know for years, and you, of course, have been studying it more closely, but one has been seeing, all this talk of sugarcane fields and leopards in the sugarcane fields, and, recently more and more cases of conflict and farmers doing thefts and finding leopard cubs. So one has been seeing those stories for years and talk of this crisis, but it seems this year it's really come to a head with, in Shiopur, you had people blocking the national highway in anger over children being killed in the area.
Yeah. So, I mean, leopard human conflict is a symptom of multiple things. One is that the forests are highly degraded. I mean, I'll give you examples. You have Jalana, which is right in the middle of Jaipur. You have Sanjay Gandhi National Park right in the middle
Jaipur.
of one of the largest metropolis like Bombay. You have leopards in pretty much lot of forest. However, you don't see that kind of conflict here. There has been hardly any attacks on people in some of the most densely packed leopard populations. These attacks, we have to understand, and the people who are listening to us have to understand, are happening in human dominated landscapes. In many of these areas are farmlands, and the definition of farmland has changed when we have started taking water intensive crops like sugarcane. So first of all, the entire
Hmm.
problem has come to a kind of a boil because of the increased human deaths in a particular taluka, the Junnar taluka in Maharashtra. So that's where problem has
Hmm.
started happening. And this problem is not new. It has happened for the last 20 years, but the intensity has grown. Other places where there are sporadic incidences, people are just joining the dots because that's our we we as humans like to join the dots to create stories. And so now you have something in Guwahati, you may have a few attacks in Uttarakhand, you may have something in Kerala, and suddenly people will start saying that leopards have started killing human beings. Leopards have not done, they don't go for a conference and decide that they want to attack humans. So let's talk about Junnar. Now, Junnar,
Hmm.
in the early 2000, dams came up. So in the Junnar Taluka, and Junnar Taluka since the mid 19th century, it is well known for sugarcane because the climatic condition, the soil conditions are conducive to sugarcane. However, that increase or
Hmm.
explosion of sugarcane happened once dams were built. So there are not one, not two, but five dams in that Junnar area now, because of which there is huge amount of water,
Hmm.
and that has encouraged farmers, all of them, to move from whatever they were growing in the past to now a monocrop of sugar. So it's vast, thousands of hectares of sugarcane has been planted. Now that area has hardly any forest. So Pune district, you named Nashik, Pune, and you also talk about Ahilya Nagar. Now these areas, not all of them are, they're all very different from each other. So Junnar, there is hardly any forest. There is absolutely no forest, in fact. So all these leopard high density areas are actually
Okay.
farmlands or sugarcane fields. So these are sugarcane leopards, and they have largely happened because of the change in water regime. Now sugarcane crop, and as you know from Terai, you have also traveled to Dudhwa and all these areas. You have similar problems with tigers. You have sugarcane tigers there, and
Yeah.
so wherever there is sugarcane, it provides good cover. It's cooler than outside. There is water all the time, and it is a good denning area. Plus, if you have dogs on the periphery, leopards can pick them and go in, and therefore even tigers can do that. And as a result, their breeding success goes up,
Right. And they
which
don't.
means
This is sugarcane. For them, it's just a type of a dense area. It seems like grass to them, like a forest. And I just want to point out about the Junar MLA who came dressed like a leopard outside the assembly steps. I mean, it was, thinking out of the box, but it did attract the eyeballs. And he spoke about the crisis dressed as a leopard with this funny, mask. And, we're showing you those and long years. I don't know where those came from. But anyway, yes, Anish, go on. You were telling us
so
about how this crisis came
no.
to
So
be.
what happens is that it creates the best habitat possible for a carnivore where they don't have to expend energy. They don't have to go in search of denning areas. Their dining area, their denning area, their mating area, their sleeping area becomes one. And as a result, densities can really explode. Also, remember that there are hardly any wild prey in that area because there is no deer, no sambar, no barking deer because it's not a
Mm.
forest. There are no monkeys because there are no trees there, right? And leopards in good quality forests thrive on small mammals like even rodents, monkeys, and small deer. Here you have dogs, you have cats, you have goats, you have sheep, you have poultry, and you obviously there will be some amount of wild pigs. And that's all these animals are having. So what happens is over generations, these animals have lost their natural instincts to actually go in for wild prey. and the babies that have been born, and remember these are multiple generations. I'm talking about 20 years.
Hmm.
So you are looking at least 10 generations of leopards. And so for them, when a cub is born and the cub sees a mother go in and pick a dog and come back, and they whenever they go and pick a dog, they will see some humans here and there. Humans may not have noticed them, but the leopards know that people and dogs are commensal, that they are found together. So their fear, inherent fear and reservation about a bipedal animal, which is human beings, just
Hmm.
goes away. They just don't think of human beings as something different from anything else. And so these multiple generations of leopards suddenly have started thinking of human habitat as their home. And in any such, if you go to a forest, then they will experiment with food, and that's what they're doing. And therefore, younger people, especially kids, because their body weight is less, and that is obviously in the range of a large sized dog, they will once in a while take people. Because this has piled up over multiple years, it's not that they have killed some large number of people in the last 2 3 years. Yes, some deaths have gone up, but the problem is brewing for many years. So this impact that you see and the reaction of people is a cumulative effect. And so I do, my sympathy really goes with the farmers, because they had
Right.
no clue that this
Absolutely.
their
I want people
farmlands
to
will become
understand.
homes for a large carnivore.
That's right. And, it's very easy for city people to say that, oh, degraded forests and we've just eaten into all that. And now, poor leopard, let's save the leopard. But also understand we're all a part of this. We're a part of this, consumerism and this society where we want power, we want our ACs running all the time. We want, cheap food, etc., etc. So we're all a part of this problem. And yes, it's the farmers and it's those in the hinterlands who are suffering, though we have seen in Pune city as well, sometimes a leopard comes into campus, into a colony. There are drones now being used to monitor the leopards. Anish, another, a somewhat controversial point is that one thing is that Maharashtra government wants to declare man-animal conflict a natural disaster subject to the Supreme Court's decision on that, but also shift leopard from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2. That apparently is something that was discussed, and this obviously means that to make culling perhaps easier, and given the high numbers and perhaps local densities, is that also possibly a conservation solution? Because end of the day, conservation involves people as well, people who live around the animals, live around the forest. And if we have a high number of leopards, old leopards that perhaps cannot hunt as well, and all that, maybe it is time to also talk, because I also don't want to see poor leopards languishing in small cages in these so-called rescue centers that are going to be put up. It's probably more humane to euthanize the leopards.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, I think we are going in that direction. See, the Wildlife Protection Act is a very powerful act. And leopard, like
Yes.
tigers, like pythons, like rhinos, are Schedule 1. And when an animal is Schedule 1, you have to go through a lot of process, and at best you can trap them or capture them alive.
Hmm.
um, there is a power given to the chief wildlife warden of the state, that is PCC of wildlife, who can pass an order of killing an animal if everything else fails. Now, all that is fine when issue is a sporadic one where people have patience. But in this situation, even if a leopard tomorrow goes and just attacks, doesn't kill somebody in that area, people are going to connect the dots, and it is going to they will react. And I do understand why they are reacting. And so I think I, as a conservationist, I feel one has to be very, very practical. Eventually, the species comes ahead or before a population in one part of India. What is important is that the optic
Hmm.
that is now going out against the leopard is not right. And that can really, and in fact, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Karnataka, these are forerunners when it comes to conservation success. And these are the states that have done exceedingly well. So if a government in a certain state is deciding to remove some animals, even if it means through culling, we have to think of it not as a human or not as an animal right issue, but we have to understand that this particular population, I'm not saying that any leopard that moves out of a forest, say you are in Ranthambore, and if a leopard enters a village, doesn't mean that leopard has to be shot. So, so downgrading an animal from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2 is only to expedite the process. However, when that happens in an on an act, its manifestations go beyond the
Right.
periphery or
Hmm.
the state of Maharashtra. This becomes a national thing. And in any case, there are several states where both tiger and leopard densities have plummeted in the last 15-20 years, when actually some states have done exceedingly well. And that is because there is no, I would say, effort put in by those particular state forest department to protect it. Neither do culturally people think of large carnivores as something that they can allow around their backyard. So what will happen is this will give an open check to a lot of other states which are anyways not doing well in conservation to just eliminate, because it's easier to kill than to ask
Right.
people to behave in a certain way,
Man.
because this is about behavior change. And how can a farmer stop going to the farm when they have to go for switching off their pumps so that it can be watered? They have to also protect or guard their farm. So these are things that are that is has to happen. So I feel like the downgrading, we have to be very mindful, and if it can be done in a certain
Yes.
way for a limited period of time in a certain area only, it is if it becomes an area specific directive coming from and ratified by the center and the state. That's one. And the second and the most important one, which you also touched upon, and I think it's a important discussion that we must have, is that conservation, the meaning of conservation is that it is consumption of natural resources in a sustainable manner. People misunderstand conservation as protectionism. So we have had to protect wildlife because in 1960s and 70s, because of hunting that was prevalent during the British time and post-British era,
Hmm.
animals had really gone down. At that point, uh, we had to protect our parks. That is why these fenced PAs, not fenced as in not fenced because of physical fences, but through protection, were created. And that is
Right.
also one of the reasons why wildlife has come back, and India has so many rivers that are flowing even in summer. So we have done that at the right time. Now, in
Right.
this particular situation where the same animals that were revered and that were spoken very highly by people are now considered as demons, we have to change that narrative. And for that, in situations, especially like Junnar, where there is no forest, all these leopards are sugarcane leopards, which means they are found in human dominated landscapes. It is leopards are carnivores, they can and they are potentially dangerous. There is nothing like an old leopard or a young animal. See, old leopard and all that we say. But think about, and you
Hmm.
are very close to Ranthambore, you know Machli, that tigress. She had no canines
Yes.
left and she was living outside, yet she never attacked people. So it's not like old animals are always dangerous. It is about a certain individual.
Sure.
But here, the entire population is potentially dangerous. I'm not saying all animals are killing them, because otherwise we would lose hundreds of people every day. But it is very
Hmm.
difficult to differentiate. And if a mother is attacking, then the cubs will soon understand how, and they may follow suit. So I think in this area, we have to be very, very clear that in sugarcane fields, we cannot have large carnivores that can be a potential life threat to people. And for that, we should do whatever is needed. Now, I am not saying rescue centers in thousands. No. What we need is multiple things. One is, first of all, action on the ground speaks louder than words, which means people are panicking now. So, we definitely have to trap leopards. And I'll give you a very shocking um, stat, because the DFO there I'm constantly in touch with. He said that there's so much pressure that they put camera traps, or not camera traps. They put actual cages to trap animals, and in 2 weeks they trapped 25 animals, and in
Oh.
small areas. So in fact, they could trap, I think, more than 50 animals just in 2 square kilometer problem area, which means that the territory that we normally call, what we call territory and range in good quality protected forests, it's a different meaning when it comes to a sugarcane area, because
We're all
there
packed
food
there,
is
very
unlimited.
concentrated.
Food, shelter, water is unlimited. Denning sites are unlimited. So breeding success is very high, which means that the density of animals has gone so much that really the idea of territory has kind of absolutely diffused now. Which means in a small 2 square kilometer areas, if in a couple of weeks they have trapped more than 15 animals in one case, now in 2 weeks 25 animals have been trapped. It means that animals are really crisscrossing this habitat. They don't really are, they are not very fussy about the area. And when that kind of thing happens, it almost becomes impossible to just get few problem animals out, because the moment you get a big animal out, that vacuum that is created is automatically taken overnight by 3 4 more animals, and the problem in that area can go up, which means now trapping should continue. There has to be constant conversation with people. Definitely, transit centers have to be made. These animals cannot be translocated, which means you cannot send them to other good quality paths, because the problem will get shifted. If a leopard grows to an age of 2 years in a human dominated landscape, there is absolutely no way that this animal is going to go for wild prey, because it takes a lot of talent and training and patience to go for that. And if you, for the first 2 years
And
of
they
their life,
cost
which is where they learn
mm,
everything from their
learn.
mother, if they don't have patience, it's like asking a Bombay child to go and stand in a queue. We are not used to that, right? Similarly, you cannot ask a leopard to go and settle down in the middle of a very healthy tiger reserve. That leopard within no time will go out into the village and the problem will
And
shifted.
create more
So,
problems there.
so no translocation, trap, trap, trap. Give it away to zoos, even if it has to go to countries outside. Give it away, but only for zoos, and in situations where you know for sure that this particular area has a few animals which are extremely dangerous but very difficult to trap. In that case, we have to probably cull
Yeah, if
those
they're man,
animals.
yeah,
But yeah,
absolutely.
so
And finally, Anish, I
like,
just hmm,
no, one more thing, like in Ranthambore or in Cobbett or in Tadoba, inside the core, nobody talks about leopards as a problem. But uh, but like we cannot have tigers, elephants, rhinos moving in big cities and towns. We cannot have large carnivores move freely in a sugarcane belt. And here we are talking about tens of thousands of hectares. It's not just some small pocket. So it's a
right.
huge issue, and we have to be mindful of it. Otherwise, the species will get a very bad name, and it can be detrimental to its future in the country. And India has the best population of leopards on earth.
Absolutely. And it's, perhaps in these areas, victim of our own success, but definitely something that we have to deal with. And to end on, I just want to say, and Anish, we're going to keep having these conversations and, of course, watch what Maharashtra is doing over this crisis. But I also want people to, also think about the NGOs that are working on the ground, not just Anish, but so many. And I think they need to be supported by people, because they're going to help the villagers, they're going to help interface between the forest department and the locals when it comes to rescue. You have such good NGOs that are helping in this rescue work as well when it comes to wild animals. So, if you can support your local NGO, I mean, that is a way to contribute to this entire issue and to conservation. Thank you so much, Anish, for speaking to us. And as I said, we'll continue to have these conversations. Thank you.
Pleasure, Gandhi. Pleasure.